The fingers wrapped around her throat like a vice, cutting off her air supply as her back slammed against the cold marble pillar of the luxury mall. Shopping bags scattered across the polished floor, expensive fabrics spilling out like wounded soldiers. Her feet dangled 2 inches off the ground. "You think you can run from me, Natasha?" Damon's breath was hot against her face, reeking of whiskey and rage. "You think signing those divorce papers meant you were free?" Natasha clawed at his hands, her designer nails breaking against his grip. Black spots danced in her vision. Shoppers gasped and scattered. Security guards shouted from somewhere far away, too far to matter. "I told you," Damon squeezed harder, watching her lips turn blue with sick satisfaction, "till death do us part." And baby, I meant every word. She was going to die. Right here, in the middle of Seoul's most prestigious shopping center, surrounded by designer stores and horrified witnesses, her ex-husband was going to murder her. 2 years of restraining orders, therapy sessions, and running across an ocean to escape him, and it would end like this. Then she heard it. The sharp crack of expensive leather shoes against marble, moving with purpose. A voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk, speaking in Korean so cold it could freeze fire. "Release her. Now." Damon laughed without turning around. "Mind your business, pretty boy. This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," the voice corrected. "And you have exactly 3 seconds to remove your hands from her throat before I remove them from your body. Permanently." Something in that voice made Damon's grip falter. Not a threat. A promise. The kind of promise that came from a man who had made good on such promises many times before. Damon turned his head slightly, and Natasha watched the color drain from his face. Standing behind them was the most beautiful and terrifying man she had ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that looked carved from stone. His black hair was swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers and warning labels. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars, and he was slowly, deliberately rolling up his sleeves, revealing forearms covered in intricate tattoos that told a story only certain people could read. Behind him stood 6 men in black, each one looking like they ate danger for breakfast. "Do you know who I am?" the man asked softly, and somehow that soft voice was more terrifying than any shout. Damon's hand loosened. Natasha gasped for air. "I asked you a question." The man took another step forward. "Do you know who I am?" Damon released Natasha completely. She crumpled to the ground, coughing and gasping, her hand flying to her bruised throat. "I don't know, and I don't care," Damon spat, but his voice wavered. "This doesn't concern you." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I am Kang Jae-won. And everything that happens in this city concerns me. Before you continue with this story, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss any of our intense stories. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next." The color drained from Damon's face so fast that Natasha thought he might faint. She didn't understand. She'd only been in Seoul for 6 months, working as an English teacher at a private academy. She didn't know who Kang Jae-won was. But clearly, Damon did. I didn't know," Damon stammered, backing away. "I didn't know this was your place. I was just assaulting a woman in broad daylight." Jae-won's voice hardened to steel. In front of approximately 43 witnesses and 12 security cameras. As if summoned, 6 men in black suits materialized from various corners of the boutique. They moved like shadows, surrounding Damon with practiced precision. "Take him to the basement," Jae-won ordered. "I'll deal with him after I ensure she's okay." "You can't do this," Damon shouted as 2 men grabbed his arms. "I'm an American citizen. I have rights. You can't just. This isn't America." Jae-won's smile was terrifying. "And in my world, I am the law." Damon was dragged away, his screams echoing through the suddenly silent mall until they faded to nothing. Then Jae-won turned to face Natasha fully, and her breath caught for an entirely different reason. He was beautiful. Not handsome in a conventional way, but striking. Dangerous. His dark eyes held a coldness that should have frightened her, but instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Safe. Can you stand? He asked, his voice softening slightly. Natasha nodded, though her legs trembled. I think so. He extended his hand. She stared at it for a moment, at the tattooed knuckles, at the perfectly manicured nails that seemed at odds with the brutal violence she just witnessed. She took it. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her steady herself. Up close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and intoxicating, mixed with a hint of cigarette smoke. You're hurt, he observed, his eyes fixed on her throat where she knew bruises were already forming. His jaw tightened visibly. He did this to you before. It wasn't a question. How do you know? She whispered. The way you froze. The way you didn't fight back. The way you're not crying, not screaming, not demanding I call the police. His thumb brushed against her wrist, where old scars peeked out from beneath her sleeve. You've learned that none of those things help. Natasha pulled her hand away, shame flooding through her. I should go. Thank you for your help, Mr. Kong, but... Where? He interrupted. Excuse me. Where will you go? He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. He found you once. He'll find you again. Your apartment isn't safe. Your workplace isn't safe. Nowhere is safe for you right now. Natasha's blood ran cold. She hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so focused on surviving the last 5 minutes that she hadn't considered the next 5 hours, the next 5 days. I'll figure something out, she said, hating how weak her voice sounded. No. Jaewon's tone left no room for argument. You'll come with me. Natasha laughed, though there was no humor in it. I don't even know you. You could be worse than him. I could be, Jaewon agreed. But I'm not. And right now, I'm your only option. He was right. God help her, he was right. Natasha looked at this stranger, this tattooed man in a suit who commanded shadows and made her abusive ex-husband tremble with a single name. Every survival instinct she developed over years of abuse screamed at her to run. But run where? Why? She asked. Why would you help me? Something flickered in Jaewon's eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. Because someone should have helped my mother. And no one did. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Before Natasha could respond, Jaewon turned and began walking toward a private elevator. My driver will take us to my residence. You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't touch you unless you ask me to. Natasha followed him, her heart pounding. And Damon? Jaewon didn't look back. Damon is no longer your problem. The elevator doors opened. Natasha stepped inside, standing beside a man she'd known for less than 10 minutes, a man who was either her salvation or her destruction. She had a feeling there would be no in-between. The penthouse was nothing like Natasha had expected. When Jaewon had said, residence, she'd imagined something cold and sterile, all black leather and sharp edges to match his intimidating demeanor. Instead, she found warmth. Soft lighting. A wall of windows overlooking the glittering Seoul skyline. Books everywhere, shelves overflowing with novels in Korean, English, French, Japanese. You read? She asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course he read. The evidence was literally surrounding her. Jaewon removed his suit jacket, draping it over a chair. My mother taught me. She said books were the only escape she had during. He trailed off, but Natasha understood. During the abuse. Mrs. Park, Jaewon called out, and a kind-faced older woman appeared from what Natasha assumed was the kitchen. Please prepare the guest suite. And bring ice. And the first aid kit. Mrs. Park took one look at Natasha's throat and her expression crumbled with sympathy. Right away, sir. The poor dear. After she left, Jaewon gestured to a plush sofa. Sit. Please. Natasha sat, suddenly aware of how surreal this all was. This morning, she'd been a normal English teacher planning her grocery list. Now she was in a mafia boss's penthouse, her ex-husband God knows where, her entire life upended. "You're in shock," J1 observed, sitting across from her. "It will pass." "How can you be so calm?" Natasha demanded. "You just had a man dragged to a basement. You just invited a complete stranger into your home. Nothing about this is normal." "Normal?" J1's lips curved into a bitter smile. "I stopped believing in normal when I was 7 years old and watched my father beat my mother to death with a telephone." Natasha's heart stopped. "He was a powerful man," J1 continued, his voice eerily detached. "A politician. Respected. Beloved by the public. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. When she finally tried to leave him, he killed her. Made it look like an accident. Everyone believed him." "Everyone except you," Natasha whispered. "Everyone except me." J1's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw the fury burning beneath his composed exterior. "I spent 20 years building an empire for the sole purpose of destroying him. When I finally had enough power, enough evidence, enough resources, I made him pay." "What did you do to him?" "Everything he did to her. And more." Natasha should have been horrified. Instead, she felt something dark and satisfied stir in her chest. "Good." J1's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people are disturbed when they hear that story. Most people have never had someone they should have been able to trust hurt them. Natasha touched her throat absently. "I understand why you did it. I just never had the power to do the same. You have it now." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Mrs. Park returned with ice wrapped in a soft cloth and a first aid kit. J1 took them from her with a quiet thank you, then moved to sit beside Natasha. "May I?" he asked, holding up the ice. Natasha nodded, and he pressed it gently to her throat. She hissed at the cold, and his free hand came up to steady her, resting lightly on her shoulder. "The bruising will be severe," he murmured. "But nothing seems to be damaged permanently. You're lucky." "Lucky." Natasha laughed humorlessly. "That's not a word I'd use." "Then let me rephrase." J1's voice dropped lower. "He's lucky I arrived when I did. Another 30 seconds, and I would have been collecting a body instead of a prisoner." The casual mention of death should have disturbed her. It didn't. "What are you going to do with him?" Natasha asked. "That depends." "On what?" "On what you want." Natasha pulled back slightly, searching his face. "Why does it matter what I want?" J1 set down the ice, his dark eyes intense on hers. "Because you're the one he hurt. You're the one who's spent years living in fear. You're the one who deserves to decide his fate. No one had ever given her that power before. Not the police who dismissed her claims. Not the lawyers who told her she didn't have enough evidence. Not the friends who'd said she must have provoked him. I don't know what I want," she admitted. "I don't even know what my options are." "Your options are limitless." J1 leaned back. "I can make him disappear permanently. I can make him suffer indefinitely. I can release him with a warning so severe he'll never come near you again. I can hand him over to the authorities with enough manufactured evidence to ensure he rots in prison for decades." "Manufactured?" "The real evidence of his crimes against you was probably never collected properly, was it?" Natasha shook her head bitterly. "He's a corporate attorney. He knows how to cover his tracks. Then we create new tracks. Better ones. Ones that lead exactly where we want them to." Natasha stared at this man, this beautiful, terrifying man who was offering her something she'd never dared to dream of. "Justice. I need time," she finally said. "To think." "Take all the time you need." J1 stood. "He's not going anywhere." Now, if you're enjoying this story, drop a comment below telling me what you think Natasha should do with Damon. And don't forget to like this video, it really helps the channel grow. Now, let's get back to the story. 3 days passed. 3 days in which Natasha barely slept, barely ate, barely did anything except wander through J1's penthouse like a ghost, trying to make sense of her situation. J1, for his part, kept his word. He gave her space. He didn't push, didn't pry, didn't try to influence her decision. He left for work early each morning, returned late each night, and the only evidence of his presence was the meals left outside her door and the occasional knock to check if she needed anything. On the 4th day, Natasha finally emerged from her room and found him in the living room, staring out at the city lights with a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He turned, and something shifted in his expression when he saw her. "I rarely do. And you?" "Same." Natasha moved to stand beside him at the window. "I keep seeing his face. Feeling his hands. No matter how many times I shower, I can't wash off the feeling of him touching me." J1's grip on his glass tightened. "You will. Eventually. It takes time." "How long?" "I don't know. I still see my father's face every time I close my eyes. But the nightmares come less frequently now. The memories have less power." They stood in silence, two damaged people looking out at a city that sparkled with false promises. "I made a decision," Natasha finally said. J1 waited. "I don't want him dead." She saw his eyebrow twitch slightly. "Not because I don't think he deserves it. But because I refuse to become a killer because of him. He already took so much from me. I won't let him take my soul too." "And the other options?" Natasha turned to face him fully. "I want him to suffer the way I suffered. I want him to feel powerless. I want him to know what it's like to be trapped with no escape, to have no one believe him, to watch everything he built crumble around him." A slow smile spread across J1's face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just been given permission to hunt. "That," he said, "can be arranged." What followed was a masterclass in destruction. J1's people moved like ghosts through Damon's life, unraveling every thread he'd ever woven. His prestigious law firm. Suddenly facing fraud allegations from a dozen former clients. His expensive condo in Manhattan. Seized due to suspicious financial activity. His reputation. Demolished by a carefully leaked story about his abuse, complete with hospital records Natasha didn't even know existed. "How did you find those?" she asked as they watched the news coverage together. "I have people everywhere," J1 replied simply. "Nurses. Lawyers. Journalists. Everyone has a price. And everyone has someone they love that they want protected." Damon's face appeared on screen, haggard and desperate, trying to defend himself against allegations that multiplied like hydra heads. Every time he denied one, two more appeared. "He looks terrified," Natasha observed. "He should be. This is just the beginning." But there was something else happening during those weeks of revenge. Something Natasha hadn't anticipated. J1. He was nothing like the cold, terrifying figure he presented to the world. Behind closed doors, he was quiet, almost gentle. He brought her tea when she couldn't sleep. He recommended books when she mentioned feeling restless. He told her stories about his childhood, the good parts, before his mother died, when she used to sing him to sleep in a language his father forbade her to speak. She was Korean, he said one night, when they'd both had too much wine and too little sleep. My father was Korean too, obviously, but he was ashamed of his heritage. Wanted to be more Western. More powerful. More everything. She was the opposite. She loved our culture, our food, our music. When he wasn't home, she'd teach me traditional songs. Do you still remember them? J1 hesitated, then softly began to hum. The melody was haunting, beautiful, filled with a sadness that made Natasha's chest ache. "What do the words mean?" she asked when he finished. "It's a song about the moon watching over someone you love. My mother used to say she would become the moon when she died. So she could always watch over me." Natasha reached out without thinking, taking his hand. His fingers were warm, strong, and they curled around hers like they belonged there. She would be proud of you, Natasha said softly. Jaewon's jaw tightened. She would be horrified by who I've become. No. She would see a man who survived the unsurvivable. A man who protects those who can't protect themselves. A man who honors her memory every single day. Jaewon's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Natasha saw the vulnerability he kept hidden from the world. The little boy who'd lost his mother. The teenager who'd clawed his way up from tragedy. The man who'd built an empire on rage and grief. You see too much, he murmured. Maybe you don't let people see enough. The air between them shifted, charged with something new. Something dangerous. Something neither of them could deny. Jaewon's free hand came up, his fingers brushing lightly against her cheek. You should go to bed. It's late. I should, Natasha agreed, but neither of them moved. If you stay here, looking at me like that, I'm going to kiss you. Natasha's heart hammered against her ribs. And if I want you to? Then you need to be sure. Because once I start, I don't think I'll be able to stop. And you've already had one man take things from you without permission. I refuse to be another. Natasha answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first. Tentative. Two broken people testing the waters of something terrifying and wonderful. But then Jaewon groaned, low in his throat, and pulled her closer, and the kiss became something else entirely. Fire. Need. A desperate claiming that left them both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Natasha's lips were swollen and Jaewon's carefully controlled composure was in ruins. Stay with me tonight, he said, his voice rough. Just to sleep. I need to know you're safe. Natasha nodded. Okay. That night, Natasha fell asleep in the arms of a man who'd killed for less provocation than a single tear rolling down her cheek. And for the first time in years, she didn't have nightmares. Weeks turned into months. Natasha moved from the guest suite to Jaewon's bedroom. She learned the rhythm of his life, the early morning workouts, the late-night business calls, the rare moments of peace when he would read beside her while she graded papers. Because yes, she'd returned to teaching. Jaewon had arranged for enhanced security at her academy, invisible guards who ensured no one could ever hurt her again. You don't have to work, he'd said when she'd announced her intention to go back. I know. But I want to. Those kids need me. And I need them. She'd cupped his face in her hands. I won't become a prisoner again, Jaewon. Not even in a gilded cage. He'd understood. Of course he had. But not everyone was happy with their arrangement. She's a liability, said Park Min-jun, Jaewon's second-in-command, one evening when he didn't know Natasha was listening from the hallway. An American woman? In your home? In your bed? The other families are talking. They think you've gone soft. Let them talk. This isn't like you, boss. You've never let anyone this close. What makes her different? A long pause. Then, because she sees me. Not the Kang Jaewon who runs Seoul's underworld. Not the monster or the myth. She sees me. And she stays anyway. Natasha pressed her hand to her heart, tears pricking her eyes. The families won't accept her, Min-jun pressed. They'll use her against you. Then I'll destroy anyone who tries. Even if it means war. Jaewon's voice hardened to steel. Especially then. The conversation haunted Natasha for days. She'd known, abstractly, that Jaewon was powerful. Dangerous. But hearing about families and war made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She was falling in love with a man who lived in shadows. A man who had more enemies than she could count. A man who would burn the world down for her. Was that a blessing or a curse? The answer came sooner than expected. It happened on a Tuesday. Natasha was walking to her car after work when she felt it. That prickle at the back of her neck. That animal instinct that screamed danger. She turned. And there he was. Not Damon. Damon was rotting in a Korean prison, His transfer arranged by J1's connections, his fellow inmates informed of exactly what kind of monster he was. He wouldn't survive his sentence. Justice, delayed but delivered. No, this was someone else. A man she didn't recognize. Tall. Cold eyes. A scar running down his left cheek. Mrs. Khan, he said, using a name that made her heart stutter. Your boyfriend has been causing problems for my employer. I'm not Mrs. Khan, she said, backing away slowly. And I don't know what you're talking about. No. The man smiled. Then allow me to educate you. Come with me quietly, and no one has to get hurt. Natasha ran. She made it 3 steps before she felt the sharp sting in her neck. A needle. Drugs flooding her system, making the world spin and blur. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the man's satisfied smile. When she woke, she was in a warehouse. Classic. How very original of her kidnappers. Her hands were bound behind her back, her ankles tied to the chair. A single light bulb swung overhead, casting dancing shadows across the concrete floor. Good, you're awake. Natasha blinked, her vision clearing, and found herself facing an older man. Distinguished. Silver hair. Expensive suit. He looked like someone's grandfather. Who are you? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. My name is Chairman Yoon. I run one of the 3 major families in Seoul. And your boyfriend has been stepping on my territory. J1 will kill you for this. Chairman Yoon laughed, a cold, hollow sound. That's exactly what I'm counting on. You see, Kong J1 has always been untouchable. Too careful. Too controlled. But ever since you came along, he's been making mistakes. Taking unnecessary risks. All because of love. The word dripped with contempt. Love makes men weak, Yoon continued. And weak men can be destroyed. When he comes for you, and he will, my men will be waiting. 2 birds, 1 stone. Fear gripped Natasha's heart, but not for herself. For J1. The trap was obvious. He would walk right into it because of her. He won't come, she said, desperately trying to buy time. We're not that serious. I'm just a woman he's sleeping with. He wouldn't risk everything for. The slap came out of nowhere, snapping her head to the side. Don't insult my intelligence, Yoon hissed. I know what you mean to him. My spies have been watching for months. The great Kong J1, the coldest man in Seoul, reduced to a lovesick fool by a foreign English teacher. Blood trickled from Natasha's split lip. She tasted copper and rage. He'll kill you, she said again, quieter this time. And I hope I'm alive to watch. Yoon smiled. We'll see. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in the dark. Natasha worked at her bonds, ignoring the way the rope cut into her wrists, ignoring the blood running down her fingers. She would not wait to be rescued like a damsel. She would not let J1 walk into a trap. The ropes loosened slightly. Then more. Come on, come on, come on. A commotion outside the warehouse doors. Shouting. Gunfire. He's here. Natasha renewed her efforts with desperate energy. The ropes gave way just as the doors exploded inward. But it wasn't J1 who entered first. It was Mrs. Park. Sweet, motherly Mrs. Park, who made the best kimchi jjigae and always tucked Natasha in when she fell asleep on the couch. Mrs. Park, holding 2 guns and dropping men with shots so precise they were almost surgical. Natasha's jaw dropped. Behind Mrs. Park came a flood of men in black, and at their center, J1. His face was expressionless, but his eyes, God, his eyes were burning with a fury so intense it was almost physical. Chairman Yoon emerged from the shadows, a gun pressed to his own temple. One more step, and I'll. You'll what? J1's voice was terrifyingly calm. Kill yourself. Save me the trouble. He kept walking. I'll kill her. Yoon screamed, swinging the gun toward Natasha. I'll. A shot rang out. Not from J1. From Natasha. She'd grabbed a fallen guard's weapon while everyone was focused on the standoff. Her hands were shaking, her aim was terrible, but at this range, it didn't matter. Yoon crumpled to the ground, clutching his knee, screaming in agony. That was for slapping me, Natasha said, her voice trembling with adrenaline. Do you want to see what I do for kidnapping? J1 was at her side in an instant, pulling her against him so hard she could barely breathe. You're alive. You're alive. Thank God, you're alive. I'm okay, she whispered against his chest. I'm okay. I got myself free. I was going to. I know. I know you were. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. You're magnificent. You know that? Absolutely magnificent. I'm also terrified. And I think I might throw up. And why does Mrs. Park know how to shoot like that? J1 laughed, a slightly hysterical sound of relief. She's former intelligence. Retired. I hired her as my housekeeper because I needed someone who could protect the house if I wasn't there. Of course you did. Natasha started laughing too, the absurdity of everything crashing over her. Of course the sweet grandmother who makes me breakfast is actually a spy. Former spy. Oh, well, that makes it completely normal. They held each other in the middle of the carnage, laughing and crying and utterly, completely alive. Now, before we continue to the ending of this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Trust me, you don't want to miss our next story. Now, let's see how this all ends. 3 months later. Natasha stood on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the sun set over Seoul. The city had become home in ways she'd never expected. The language, the food, the culture, she'd embraced it all. But more than that, she'd embraced her new life. Her new self. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into J1's chest. What are you thinking about? He murmured against her hair. Everything. Nothing. How strange life is. Strange how? Natasha turned in his arms. A year ago, I was hiding in a tiny apartment, jumping at every sound, convinced that I would never feel safe again. Now I'm living with the most dangerous man in Korea, and I've never felt more protected. Dangerous? J1's eyebrow rose. Is that how you see me? It's how the world sees you. But I see something different. What do you see? Natasha reached up, tracing the line of his jaw. A man who's spent his whole life building walls to keep people out. A man who thinks he doesn't deserve love because of the blood on his hands. A man who's so afraid of becoming his father that he doesn't realize he's the exact opposite. J1 caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. You see too much. I've told you that before. And I'll keep seeing it until you believe it too. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. Marry me. Natasha's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Not because I need to protect you. Not because you need to escape anything. But because I can't imagine spending another day without you as my wife. Because I love you. Because you make me want to be better. Because every moment without you feels like a prison, and every moment with you feels like freedom. Tears spilled down Natasha's cheeks. J1. You don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer ever if you're not ready. I just needed you to know. I need you to know that I choose you. Every day. Forever. Natasha thought about everything she'd been through. The years of abuse. The fear. The running. The feeling that she would never be whole again. Then she thought about the past few months. The healing. The growing. The learning to trust again. The discovering that she was stronger than she'd ever believed. And she thought about this man. This beautiful, broken, devastating man who had saved her without trying to change her. Who had given her power instead of taking it. Who had shown her that love didn't have to hurt. Yes, she whispered. J1 froze. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll spend my life with you. Yes, I'll love you even when you're dangerous, especially when you're dangerous, because I know now that dangerous doesn't mean harmful. Not with you. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. The Seoul skyline glittered behind them, a city of secrets and shadows and unexpected love stories. Natasha had come to Korea running from her past. She'd found her future instead. 6 months after the wedding, Natasha stood in front of a roomful of women at Seoul's largest domestic violence shelter. It was a project she and Jaewon had built together, funded by his empire, run by survivors like her. You are not weak because someone hurt you, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. You are not damaged because someone tried to break you. You are survivors. You are warriors. And your story is not over. She saw the tears in their eyes. Saw the flickers of hope. Saw herself in every single face. I know what it's like to feel like there's no way out. I know what it's like to believe you deserve the pain. But I'm here to tell you that's a lie. You deserve safety. You deserve love. You deserve a future where you write your own ending. After the talk, a young woman approached her. Timid. Bruised. Familiar. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked quietly. Natasha took her hands. It gets easier. It changes. The scars become part of your story instead of your definition. And one day, you'll look back and realize you've become someone new. Someone stronger. Someone unbreakable. How do I start? Natasha smiled. You already have. You're here. That's the hardest step. Now you just have to keep walking. She watched the young woman return to the group, watched the volunteers surround her with support and resources and hope. This was her purpose. This was her redemption. Turning her pain into someone else's healing. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned into Jaewon's familiar embrace. You're amazing, he murmured. I learned from the best. Mrs. Park. Natasha laughed. Obviously. That woman is terrifying and wonderful. She is. Jaewon turned her to face him. But so are you. You've built something incredible here. Something that will outlast both of us. We built it together. You had the vision. I just had the checkbook. Natasha shook her head. You had more than that. You had the courage to let me in. To let yourself be loved. That was the hardest thing either of us has ever done. Jaewon kissed her forehead. Still worth it. Still worth it. They stood there, in the shelter they'd created, surrounded by the evidence of their love made tangible. The past couldn't be erased. The scars would never fully fade. But the future stretched out before them, bright with possibility. Damon was dead. His prison sentence had been cut short by inmates who believed in their own kind of justice. Natasha had received the news with nothing more than a quiet nod. He couldn't hurt anyone anymore. That was all that mattered. Chairman Yoon was in prison, his empire dismantled, his family scattered to the winds. The other families had learned the lesson well, nobody touched what belonged to Kang Jae-won. And Natasha? Natasha was finally free. Free to love. Free to live. Free to be the woman she'd always been capable of becoming. The little girl who'd grown up dreaming of romance had never imagined this. Never imagined that her great love story would begin with violence in a mall, with a man rolling up his sleeves and choosing her. But the best stories never go the way you expect. And this was just the beginning of theirs. The end. Thank you so much for staying until the end of this story. If you loved Natasha and Jaewon's journey, drop a comment telling me your favorite part. And if you want to see more stories like this, make sure you're subscribed and you've hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next one.